We're in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, describing love. Love is described here throughout this chapter. We began really with that explanation of it, the description of it in verse 4, and in verse 5 we continue. In verse 5 it says, does not act unbecomingly, it does not seek its own, is not provoked, and does not take into account a wrong suffered. There's a lot of things that love is not, and there's a lot of things that love is. But it's interesting here in these two verses of description, and there's a third and fourth coming, that what it is not is presented to us much more than what it is. And that's because we are so easily and prone to do what it is not. And such sad realities of life, we don't do what it is nearly enough. But it says it does not act unbecomingly. What you do is important. Now, we always stress, and we'll stress here, that what you do comes from what you think. But the reality is you then do it. And when you do it, there are terrible consequences. It is not true that if you could just measure and say, well, I've already thought it. No, don't do it. Because if you do the sin that you have thought of, not only do you compound the sin, but now it's out. It's out of the bottle, and it's going to hurt people. Does not act unbecomingly. It doesn't make matters worse. It doesn't hurt. Love helps. Love is not something that disturbs. Instead, it is something that supports and encourages and strengthens. Encouraging you to recognize that Paul oftentimes is a man of few words, and we need to be a man of few words, women of few words, so we do not act unbecomingly. Now that is a long word meaning rude, but there's more to it than that. It's a lazy word meaning reckless. Reckless behavior. You could stop it, but you're acting unbecomingly. You're rude. I think of the drunk at the party. There's so many things that are going to go wrong there because the person simply was lazy and reckless in their attitudes and then their actions. It's increasingly risky to live a life that is unbecoming, a life that is rude. It does not seek its own. You are not a selfish person if you are a believer. You are following the example of the selfless Christ. And you want to live for others, not for yourself. Ask yourself if you can. I know you can't. I know we're not going to ask ourselves the same question every attitude, every action we take. But if we could, it would be a good thing to do. Is this for me? Am I doing this for myself? And if it is, 99% of the time, you shouldn't do it. You'll be doing it for other people. It says, is not provoked. I like some of the translations. They're easier on us because it says, is not easily provoked. But the New American, the most literal, says, is not provoked. It does not get provoked. Love is selfless, and love is kind, and love is all the things that it is. And you can't come against it so that it reacts back. It has self-limitations placed upon it by walking in the Spirit. And silly protections, not. There's no silly protections of your life. You and I walk around with them. Oh, I can't get this close. You do this, and finally I'm going to. Silly protections. Selfish exhibitions are the way we normally live, being provoked here, being provoked here, being provoked, exhibiting, an impatient spirit. It does not take into account a wrong suffered. If you look at love, it does not and is not vengeful. The Old Testament's very clear that we are not to take vengeance because God is the vengeful God. He knows what is exactly right and he knows what is exactly wrong. And we don't. We so often factor in ourselves when we should not. It comes before being provoked. If you will take into account a wrong suffered, hold it in your heart, it will so easily allow you to be provoked. You'll carry around too much weight. It sort of captures pain in the bottle on purpose. Don't do that. Don't take into account a wrong that's done against you. Forgive. They may not have the forgiveness back. They may not receive it. It may not be two, but at least it's one. It's one in you is a majority. Thank you for being with us here on God's Word for today. Come back tomorrow as we look at a further description of what love is and what love is not.